Hi everyone, I'm Aaron Runt, and today what we're going to be doing is I'm going to show you how to take this stock of material, which is 303 stainless, and we're going to change it into this part right here, and we're going to program it using our FeatureCAM software. Now the way I'm going to show you is going to seem a little unconventional, but it's always good to know more than one way to manufacture something. So let's not waste any more time and let's get to it. Alrighty, so before we get started, let's take a look at our blueprint. And this print's going to look a little different. Most of my dimensions are coming off this back end right here. And I have all my diameters, and I have some radius callouts and some threads. So my game plan right now is to face and turn, groove, and thread. So I'm going to get all those point locations right here, but I also want to get the locations for the backside. So this is going to make a lot more sense once I get started. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to plot all my points for these parts right over here. So I'm going to keep this down here in the bottom right so we can kind of reference to it. So I've got my FeatureCAM open. I am doing a turn part. So we're going to go to create a new document. And when it comes up, it's going to start asking me for my dimensions. Now I like to keep my window out of the way. I don't like stuff happening behind my window without me being able to see it. I like to move it right over here. We're going to go through and set up this material. Now the material that I have set up here is going to be 200 thousandths longer than the overall length. So I've got 4.5 here. I've got 2-inch material, and I have no ID here. So I'm going to hit next. And this is going to be, like I said, 303 stainless steel. If you have a different type of material, you can obviously select it right here. And you can adjust the feeds and speeds table right here depending on that type of material. But we're not going to mess with that. We'll go through in a second and manipulate the speeds and feeds as we go. I'm going to hit next. And then I'm not going to be doing any 4th axis positioning. This is just going to be a 2-axis lathe project. And then I'm going to hit finish. Now if you look here, it already has my user coordinate system set up. So this is where all my toolpath is going to be coming from. But I'm going to kind of set it up a little different than what you would expect. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hit OK. I can double click on this to get this to come up, or what I like to do is to make sure I get it just right, I am going to right click on setup and go into properties. Brings up the same window. That's just going to be just fine. So I'm going to go to 0, and I'm still going to be aligned to this face right here. I don't want to come to the back because it's going to put my positive arrow the other way. So I'm going to keep it right here, but I'm going to move it back the full length of the material, which is 4.5. So minus 4.5, I'm going to hit apply. But I want to take off 100 thousandths per side. So here's where it gets a little interesting. That's going to be 400 thousandths. I'm going to click anywhere right here because I can't apply it. It moves it, and then I hit apply one more time. So here's where it gets cool. I'm not going to overthink how I'm going to make this part. I'm simply going to plot the points and then connect them as if I was hand programming this part. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to come up to here into my construction right here. Now I don't have any grid lines. If you have your grid lines turned on, that's fine. They might get in the way, so I typically like to turn them off. And then I'll hit OK, and we'll come back to this screen later so we can see more. Now on this blueprint, we're going to start actually picking the locations of each pivot point until we have the profile defined. So I'm going to go into my point, and if you look down here, here's where all the action is going to take place, and you'll start seeing it up on the screen. I'm going to kind of zoom up a little bit. I like to right click and go into pan mode so I can move it over and then zoom up. So I want to get you a really good view of what's happening here. And we're going to start with the first position, which is going to be 0, and then I'm going to hit tab, and then I'm going to hit 0 again. It already was. I hit tab one more time, and then I'm going to hit enter. Now you can't see it very well, but it is right there in green. That's the point we just made. So following my blueprint, we're just going to go right on through and make all these points. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get after it. So my next point is going to be 1 inch, 950 thousandths of my diameter. And it's not going anywhere in Z. So that's going to remain 0. And I'll hit enter. Notice how it put that point right there. And now I'm just going to continue making my points all the way down the part. So my next area is going to be the same diameter, and then it's going to come out 800 thousandths, and I'm going to hit enter, and I'm just going to keep on going. The next X will be 1 inch 700 thousandths. It's still going to be 800 thousandths down, and then I've got 1 inch 700 thousandths by 1 inch 300 thousandths, enter. And if you don't want to hit tab to move from this window to that window, you can simply hit enter instead of tab. So I'm going to start doing that to speed up the process even more. So now we're going to go down to the bottom of my groove, which is going to be 1 inch 250 thousandths by 1.3 because we haven't moved in Z. And then I'm just going to keep on going. I'm going to go 1 inch 250, 1.5, enter. 1.450, tab, 1.5, enter. Still at 1 inch 450, tab, 2.8, enter. And then we're going to go down to 0.750, tab, 2.8, tab, enter, or just enter. So like I said, it's not going to hurt anything if you keep hitting tab or enter as long as your location is correct. So next we have the same diameter, and we're going to go to 3.0. Now we're going to come up to the top of my threads. Now, the top of my threads are not going to be exactly 1 inch, okay? We're going to put the nominal diameter for 1 inch 8 threads from our Machinery's Handbook, which is 990 thousandths. We're going to go ahead and type that in. So 990 thousandths. And then I'm going to be still at 3 inches, enter. And then I'm going to go 0.990 thousandths. And I'm only going to be 4 inches, 300 thousandths. Now this will be cool, but that's not where I want to go. I want to go a little bit shorter than that. So I'm simply going to type in minus 90 thousandths, and when I hit enter, it does the math for me. So the next move is going to be 0.990 minus 0.09, tab, and my Z is going to be 4 inches, 300 thousandths, enter. Again, I did the math for me in Z here. It did the math for me in here in X. So the last point I have is going to be 0 by 4.3, enter. So obviously with me talking through each step, it takes a little bit longer, but you doing these steps is going to go a lot faster. Now here comes the fun part. I'm going to hit escape. If you look at my cursor, it goes back to the selection mode, and I want to start connecting all these points. So I'm going to go up to line, but I'm going to hit the drop down menu, and I'm going to go to connect. So I'm going to start right here. Notice how it turns green. If it's not turning green, you need to come up to your modes. Notice how I have this point selected. If I deselect it, you're going to be struggling to get this to be selected. So your snap modes are your friend. So turn on the right snap mode, and then we're going to just start clicking at each location. And before you know it, the profile of my part starts developing. And take your time. Notice how I'm not going too fast. And now I don't have any more lines to make, so I'm simply going to hit escape. Now here's the deal. I have my profile done, but when I go to do my turning passes, it's going to try to drive my turning tool down here in this groove because it's going to try to follow this path. So I'm going to teach you a quick little trick. I'm going to zoom up on where my line is, and I'm holding my scrolling mouse to be able to pan right now as I scroll up. So holding it will allow you to go over. Now this trim extend that I'm about to show you is acts kind of funny sometimes. So I want to click this line and I want to extend it that way. But sometimes when you click it, see how it made a gap right there? But I'm going to go ahead and click it one more time. So it actually trimmed. But now trim extend is still active. So now I'm going to click the end of my line and I'm going to take it right up to there. And then I'll come up to clip and I'm going to clip it. So now I have a continuous line that I can use to pick my curves. So I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to do the same thing right here. So I'm going to go into trim extend pick my line. It doesn't matter if you just go this way or that way. It's just going to make your line, the gap right here, bigger or smaller. And then I will click it again, and then I'm going to clip it. This is just a really quick way to get into it, and I'm going to come back and click the face of my part, and then I'll zoom up a little bit because I want you all to be able to see it. So here's where it gets really easy. We've done all the hard work. We're done now. The next thing I want to do is I want to move my setup back to the front of my part here. So I'm going to go back to my setup. I'm going to right click and go to properties. I'm going to go to 0. I'm going to pick the front of my part, but remember, I want to be 100 thousandths in. So I'm going to type in a minus 0.1. I'm going to hit apply and OK. So now we're going to go into features. I'm going to go into features, and the first thing I want to do, now when we hand programmed this, we let our G71 take off all the material off the face. Well, sometimes the software doesn't like how that works. So I'm going to go into face. I'm going to hit next. I'm going to hit next again. It just shows it going in that direction. And then I'm going to hit next. I want roughing passes so it doesn't try to take off 100 thousandths at once. I'll go into next. It's got a good tool. You can come through here and select what tool you want. This tool has a 31 thousandths radius. If I wanted to, I could look for a different one. But this is going to be a good tool. Now here's my feeds and speeds. Now remember, this is 303 stainless steel. Now when we hand program this part, we are at 300 for our G96. I don't want to get out of control, so my G50 is going to be 1200. And we're going to reduce our feed rates to 8 thousandths inches per revolution. Now from here, it's going to pick the same tool, and you see it did keep my spindle cap here, and it did keep my surface footage per minute, but it did slow down on my finish. So that's good. So I'm going to hit next, and then I'm going to keep going on next, and I'm going to hit finish. Now to control my depth of cut, I want to go into rough. I'm going to go into my facing, and I'm going to tell it the depth of cut is not 200 thousandths. It's going to be about 25 thousandths, or if we're sticking out pretty far on my little machines that I have in the shop, we're going to go about 20. So it'll take about 5 passes before it gets done. I'll hit OK, and then I want to see this run. So I'm going to go to home. I'm going to go to simulation mode and change it to center line. So I'm going to come down here. I've taken my speed and I've lowered it all the way down. And I'm simply going to hit play. You can see it does all those little passes before it actually does its finish pass. And then I like to go into 3D mode, and I simply hit play again. And you can see it's taking off those passes. So we'll hit eject. We've got the facing down. Now we're going to do our turning. So I've got a features button on my home tab. I like to do this one. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a from curve. I'm going to do a turn. But we haven't made any curves. So I'm going to go to curve chaining. I'm going to pick the front of my part, and watch this. I'm going to come all the way back here and select that. See how it skipped over my grooves? That's good because I don't want my turning tool trying to dive in there to make those. So I'm going to simply hit next. It has everything that looks good. I'll come up to next. It has my roughing passes, my finishing passes. Everything on here looks to be good. It's going to pick that same tool. And you'll notice that I'm going to have to come up here and change this again. So 300 by 1200. And we're going to leave this at 15 thousandths per revolution because we are roughing. We want to get rid of that material. I'll hit next again. And then I'll come back to here. And you can see I need to fix this. I don't want it to go too fast. I got my 300 and a good finishing feed rate. Now I'm going to hit finish. And again, I want to go into roughing because I don't want it to be too aggressive. So see how it's trying to take 200 thousandths depth of cut? I want to change that to a maximum of 50. Now remember, the bigger your machine is, obviously the more aggressive you can get. But we're just doing this for learning. So I'm going to hit apply. And also, if you'll notice, if I come up here to finish allowance, I'm leaving 5 thousandths on X and on Z. Well, I don't want to leave 5 thousandths on the Z. I'm going to change that to 3 thousandths, and I'm going to hit set. Now on here, I want to leave a little bit more because the insert that I'm using seems to work a little bit better when it takes off more on the finished pass. So 8 to 10, just whatever comes out best for you. So hit apply. I'll hit OK. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and go into centerline mode and hit play. So it's going to do my facing, and you can see it's doing my turning. Now remember, I have my chuck jaws holding onto this part, and they're sticking out 3/4 of an inch. So I only got this little bit hanging out of my chuck jaws. But I haven't turned this side yet, so that's kind of interesting. We're going to hit that in just a moment. So there's all my turn. Let's go back into 3D mode. And if you want to, we can look at this in an isometric mode by right-clicking on the screen and hitting isometric. And if you don't want to show your tool, we have ways of doing that as well, because sometimes the tool does get in the way. But I'm going to leave it there for right now, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. So I'm going to click on top, and then I want to rotate it, and I'm going to hit eject. So now we're going to go ahead and start working on our grooves. So I'm going to go up to Features, and I'm going to go into my groove, click my groove, I'm going to hit Next, and I'm going to do curve chaining. Now keep in mind, I click the face of my groove and I click the back, but I don't want it to stop right there. I want it to come up to the top so that my tool doesn't run into here. It will actually come down from here. So I'll hit Next, and then I'll keep going, and then I'll have to change my tool. So I like to look for a different tool so I know exactly which one it is. So I'm going to select this 122. I'm going to hit Next, and I'm going to come up here and change my speeds. And then I'm going to change my feed. Again, this is whatever you like to run at. And notice how it kept my same tool. I'm just going to keep hitting Next. And I'm going to change this so it doesn't get too fast. And I'm going to change this down to 3. I'm going to hit Next and Next again. And one more time. And I'll hit Finish. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now let's go ahead and go to our center line. And let's hit play. But I'm going to slow it down so I can see it run my facing, and it's going to run my turning. Now here's something else that's really cool. Maybe I don't want to watch all that run. Maybe I want to watch it go to the next tool change. So let's speed it up, and you can see that my tool stopped right here. So what's cool is I can come into single block mode, and I can start stepping it through each process. So here comes my finish, comes over, comes up, goes home, and it's done. So that's really cool. So I'm going to hit eject. I'm going to run it my 3D mode, and I did speed it up so we can go ahead and see what's running. That looks really good. So now that that's done, let's go ahead and do the next one. Let's go to Features. I want a groove. I'm going to do curve chaining. I'm going to pick this. I'm going to pick the back a little bit higher. I'm going to hit Next. See that it does look good. I'll keep hitting Next until I get to my tool. Again, I want to use the same tool for each operation. So I pick my 122, and I'm going to go ahead and change these parameters. And I went 8 thousandths on the last one. Now remember, withdrawal feed and feed rate are two different things. It's going to use the same tool for finishing. I'll slow it down, go to my 3, and hit Next, and then it's all done. It's a lot of next and OKs. There's a lot of features that we're just leaving at default that if you need to, you can control later. So let's go back into our center line, and let's play all the way to the next tool. And now we're just going to slow this down and hit play. You can see that did everything. Let's go into my 3D mode and hit play for everything. And this time I'm going to right click and go into isometric mode. So that way we can see what's happening here. That looks really good. So let's click on my top. And if it doesn't turn correctly, I'm going to go ahead and hit my arrow to orientate it correctly. And then I'll hit eject. Now the next thing we got here is we have our turn, we have our grooves. Let's go back in our features because we got to make our threads. So I'm going to go to Thread from Dimensions. I'm going to hit Next. And what's cool is I've got a lot of options here. So this is a 1-inch 8 thread. So I hit Standard Thread, and I hit my drop down, and you'll see it's right there. And if you'll notice, look at that major diameter. That is being pulled from the Machinery's Handbook to the nominal dimensions. So we already made it to that, so we're in good shape. because our turning tool is what establishes that diameter, not the threading tool. So I'm going to put my thread length, like it says to my print here, at 1.3. And I'm going to hit preview. Now notice I have a relief groove that's being put into here that I don't really need. So I'm going to hit next. So you can see that the Z is at the face of the material. I hit next. Now right here where it says relief groove, I'm going to deselect it. And for visual purposes, I hit next. And then I'm simply going to hit back. So that way it kind of gives me an image of my part without the relief groove. So from here, I'm going to hit next. It's going to pick a threading tool that will work. If I need to, I can search for another one. And I'm going to go into here. Now this, I'm going to put it 300. I don't want to max out. And then my feed rate is already established. So that works out pretty good. So I'm going to hit next. I'm going to hit finish. And then I'm going to hit OK. Now here was what's really cool. When I go to the next tool, and I come and do my grooves, there's my tool. I'm going to hit play, but we're going to watch our simulation very carefully to see what happens. And let's slow it down a little bit. Now if you notice, it's not hitting, but as it gets deeper, I see something happening right here. So I'm going to go into my isometric view, and you can see my tool is indeed colliding with my shoulder. So we want to fix that. So let's go back to top view. Let's hit eject. And I'm going to actually come over here and right click on my thread and go to properties. And it's going back 1.3. I'm going to play it safe, and I'm going to come back 50 thousandths. I'm going to hit apply. And then I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to skip to my tools. And I'm going to slow down. And I'm going to go to isometric mode first. So right here, we're going to slow it down. And I'm going to hit play one more time. And we can see that this time as it's running, it is not colliding with my shoulder, which is good. So I'm going to hold down Control and the middle mouse for rotating. Or if I needed to, I could right click and then hit rotate. And I can rotate around wherever I need to. So anyway, let's go back to the top. We can see that we successfully did that. I'm going to change mine back to pan because that's my personal preference. But here's the thing. Our first side is done. But we need to cut the back side first. Well, let's go ahead and make our toolpath for the back side before we get too carried away. So I'm going to come up here to setups. And this is going to be setup number 2, which is going to be the back side. And I'm going to go to 0, and I'm going to pick this back surface right here. But remember, I'm going to move in 100 thousandths, and I hit enter just to go ahead and apply it and move it at the same time. Now if you needed to, I could have clicked on the screen and then hit enter. So from here, we're going to do the same thing. Nothing too fancy. We're going to come up here. We're going to do a face. We're going to see that it is at the right position. We're going to do rough and finish passes, so that way it doesn't take it all off at once. It's going to use the correct turning tool. We'll change these values. And then we'll go ahead and leave that at 15 thousandths. And then for my finish pass, I don't want it speeding way too fast. And then we'll just leave that where it is. I'll hit next. And then I'll hit finish. Now remember, I'm going to click on rough, facing. I want that depth of cut to be 20 thousandths. And then I'm going to hit set and apply. Let's hit OK. I'm going to turn off setup 1 by deselecting that box because I just want to watch this backside run. So I'm going to hit play in my wireframe mode. And you can see that my tool has gone backwards and it has done the face. So that's good. So let's hit eject. We'll watch it in 3D mode. Nothing too fancy. We'll hit eject. Now something I want to make sure, I click on setup 2 because sometimes when I deselected setup 1, it's going to try to put your next turn on this section right here. So I'm going to go to setup 2, make sure it's selected. I'm going to click on features, and then we're going to make a turn from a curve. So let's hit next. Let's go to curve chaining. We'll pick the face of my part. It'll pick the OD. See how it makes my turn right there. We'll hit next. I'm going to go into next again. And this is going to be kind of repetitive. It's picked out my tool. I'm going to change my surface footage, my spindle cap. Now remember, at the very beginning, we could set all this up so we didn't have to do this every time. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and do it manually. So I'm hitting next a bunch. I'm hitting finish. It seems a bit repetitive. Now I'm going to go into my roughing. I'm going to go into turn. I'm going to reduce this to 50 thousandths. I'm going to hit set and apply. And on the finishing, to get that better finish, I'm going to hit set at 8 thousandths. And I'm going to reduce this to 3 thousandths. And then I'm simply going to hit OK. So we're going to go into my centerline mode, and we're going to hit play. So it does my facing, and then it does my turning. So that's great. So let's go ahead and run it in 3D mode. And you can see it does it just fine. Now here's what's crazy. I'm going to activate setup 1, and we're going to watch it run. And I'll speed it up. But you'll notice it does a setup 2 second. Now here's where it gets really convenient. I'm going to click, hold, and drag setup 2 above setup 1 and let go. It took everything with it. Now I'm going to slow it down and I'm going to hit play again. And just like that, my program will run the back side first, and then it will run this as the second setup. So that right there looks pretty good. So the next thing I would do is I'd get my NC code, I'd run it through a simulator if I wanted to, and then I would simply take it out to the machine and run it. All right, well, that pretty much sums it up on how we would use our FeatureCAM software to create the toolpath to make this part. I know it was a bit unconventional in the process that we used to make it, but sometimes using that unconventional process and thinking outside the box is how we make our manufacturing process a little bit easier. So again, if you like this video, be sure and like and subscribe if you'd like to see more like it. My name is Aaron Runk, and thank you for watching.